Mike, you're on.
Come on. What's up, everybody? We're live for episode number 4 here at the Function House, live from Redhook. Tonight we have a very special guest, the one and only DJ Riz.
What up, what up, what up, what up? What is?
What's up, man?
Everything's good, man. Come
Welcome.
to kick it with the crew.
Yeah.
Yo, Riz, tell us where it all started. Like, bring us back to like before the DJ days, and where did it all start?
I mean, it started in Canarsie, man.
Yes.
Canarsie, Brooklyn. Born and raised. I mean, I was making pause button tape deck mixes. You know, like just taping Red Alert, Marley Marl, The Awesome 2, and grabbing songs off the radio that they were mixing and making my own edits with the pause button. So it's kind of like a reel-to-reel without the reel-to-reel.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it was like, wow, you know, I made one song go into another song without a mixer or a turntable or anything. So that always intrigued me. And I would listen to like the Latin Rascals on KTU. These guys were just murdering the edits. So that kind of inspired me. After school, I'd come run home like around, I think it was like 10 after 4. And I'd go put my tape in, tape the whole thing, and you know, there you have it, man. It
So
was,
how old were you when you were doing that?
that was, I had to be, that was high school, so, I mean, I don't,
14, 15
yeah,
years
around
old.
14, yeah, 14.
So talk to us about first set of turntables, first mixer. How'd you get that?
The first turntable, my dad actually bought me, so thank you, Dad. Even though he was against it, just, you know, I think every parent was against it. You know what I mean?
Not today.
No.
Right? No, not today. When they see everybody like these Calvin Harris and everybody, but it's not that
But
easy.
you don't get benefits, so
Right?
no benefits.
No benefits, no
benefits,
health
yeah.
benefits, nothing. Yeah. So the turntable, my dad got me, and then one of my only jobs that I ever really worked was like a daycare center, and I was like a counselor in the summer. Because I needed to make money. I wanted to get that other turntable. So that job got me that other turntable. So I finally had 2 turntables. One was like a SLB 100 belt drive. And then when the 1200s came out, that was the first one I had. So I didn't even have matching pairs, but I just needed something, man, because I had the itch.
First mixer.
First mixer, I think it was like a pyramid, or like one of those things where the crossfader would hit the middle and it would lock. So that's it. When you're in the middle, you're good. But you couldn't really like go left or right. You had to like kind of push it harder. So yeah, I mean, even the Geminis with the sound effects, they had all these little sound
Yeah.
effect buttons, and it was crazy. But
Gemini.
you know,
Terrible.
now they make the mixes that they last a lot longer. You know, I mean, it's definitely a lot more money, but you know, back then it would short out like after a week. You know, and they were like, "What do
And
you
the
do?"
sound quality was
Yeah, it was terrible, man, terrible. But you know, it's definitely a good era to come up in, man, because as you see the progression to this day,
Oh yeah.
you know, technology-wise is just insane. I always say it's the gift and the curse, you know, like guys that embrace it and really know what they're doing with it, it's amazing. But then, you know, there's people that just really don't know.
So when you first started, who were like some of the promoters that helped you, or promoters that hired you?
Promoters.
Back in the day, like first parties.
I think it was like my friend Riz from back in the days, Stevie D's brother. We all grew up in Canarsie, and he actually knew Red Alert. He had a croissant shop downstairs from Kiss FM. So, you know, being that me and him were like real hip hop heads, he'd be like, "Yo, you want to come to Kiss, this and that?" So I go visit him. He'd take me up. That's how I met Red Alert. And I was giving Red Alert my mixtapes and everything. I was just like, you know, in awe, man. And so he kind of like got me up into that whole radio lane, you know, with just meeting those guys. And then he also got me my first biggest club, because one of his friends was either the owner or the manager at Home Base. And that was like the biggest hip hop club in the city at the time, man. And I think it was like 92.
Wow.
And yeah, man, I mean, every group, you name it, every Friday and Saturday was packed.
Well, you were on the radio station then also.
Well, I was doing college radio.
College radio.
Yeah, I started college radio in 90 when I went to Hofstra.
Hofstra.
And they already had like a nice following on their show. It was like kind of like a legendary show, you know, like leaders of the new school. They were all from out there, and you know, there would be groups that would come up every week, even on the weekend. And you know, I gave the guy my tape, my mixtape, and I was like, "Yo, I'm dying to just, you know, get on the radio, man." And one day, shout out to Johnny Juice. Johnny Juice is a legendary DJ that did a lot of stuff with Public Enemy, and he was the main DJ there. So what happened was Jeff Force was the guy who ran the station, and that's who I gave my tape to. I was playing football in college at the time. I was living in, you know, at Hofstra, but you know, my goal was definitely to get on that show. And then one day he called me. He's like, "You want to do radio? How do you feel about doing radio one night? You know, Juice is not going to be here." I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So my first show, mad nervous, but like back then I was doing a lot of battles too. Like I did the DMC, the seminar in '90. Yeah, but I mean, you know, I only did it for 1 year. It was just something.
Hairdo was crazy.
Yeah, hairdo was bananas. Not like today, but you know.
We're all there, don't worry.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Come on.
No, don't take this off.
Come on, bro. There we go.
He actually got the most out of all.
Yeah, he's got the most. But yeah. So that first radio show was crazy because that's when leaders of the new school actually had their first record played on BLS. I remember Busta Rhymes and Charlie Brown coming in and shouting out. We want to shout out Mr. Magic and Marley Marl for playing our record. Yeah. I think it was Case of the PTA. And then whatever happened, now, you know, I was playing the whole night. It was on a Saturday night, and they left, but Charlie Brown stayed, and he just freestyled over like mad beats I was playing. And like that was the first time I was like, wow, this is leaders in the new school, you know, like even though they still had a record, like their first record, but it was still, to me, it was like, damn, man, this is what radio's about, yeah. You know. And so ever since then, man, I just got the itch, and I wound up doing that show for a couple of years. And then I wound up going to another college radio show in Long Island called the Hip Hop Spot with Wild Man Steve. And that was like another classical show because guys like Ed Lover and Dr. Dre and Chuck D and all those guys used to have shows prior to Steve. So, you know, at that time, college radio was a gateway for all these artists. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it is with commercial today. Like, college barely exists anymore, you know? Like, back in the 90s, college just was the thing to do.
There was no hip-hop radio stations on.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but it was, you know, like, people used to take that route first, you know, come up, do our show, do Stretch and Bobbito, you know what I mean? And
you know what's crazy? This is all pre-Crooklyn Clan. Like, so much shit went on.
Yeah, a lot of underground stuff,
Clan.
man. A lot of underground stuff.
So what year was it that Crooklyn Clan came about?
Clan was, I would say, 93, maybe. Even before Clan, I put out a couple of records with Scribble, Firstborn, who were down with the Young Black Teenagers, and even DJ Eclipse, my former radio partner, and he DJed with MC Search with myself as well. We put out a few records before that on Nervous, party records, called the Brooklyn Slumlords. And then, I don't know, we did a couple, and then, you know, me and Sis just came up with the name Crooklyn Clan. You know, and we decided to just take it that way. I don't think the other guys were doing the party records anymore. They just wanted to make a couple. But yeah, it's from that day on, it was the Crooklyn Clan was born.
Yeah, so Crooklyn Clan made some serious noise in this whole DJ game.
It's been a long ride, man, and you know.
Yeah, like there's some of the records that you look back on, and like I'm sure when you guys were making Be Faithful, you didn't know it was gonna be.
Well, that was the weird thing. I mean, we made what we'd like to do was make, you know, we kind of, I mean, they would shout out to like Kenny Dope and, you know, Frankie Cutlass and Frankie Feliciano and, God, the Nubian Crackers, guys that were making party records before we were. You know, like those guys were making some of the most banging stuff, man. And I think what we did, we kind of like mixed the commerciality of the songs. Not so much to, you know, they were creative in their own way. You know, they were sample-based, obviously, but, you know, we were focusing on the DJs. You know, what's going to work at a party, because we're all DJs, so we kind of know, you know. So the Benjamins was big, you know, the Total record was big. When our first one we did was Is New York in the House?
That was huge.
You know, and it's just a loop with 2 loops, but, you know, when you dropped it, you got a response, an impact response, you know, and then everybody would be like, oh, and then you just get out of it. So what we kind of thought about it was, let's get the impact, and then let's just kind of make it like a transition record. You know what I mean? There's all these regular songs that we play all the time in the club. So let this be like a tool. So they were kind of like tool records, party records, transition, whatever you want to call them, but they served their purpose. You know what I mean?
When you guys were in the studio making them, did you think you would tour the world playing them?
I mean, we should have been touring a lot more, but It's all good.
But it was different back then, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely different. I mean, you know, a lot of things in this business go on, you know.
What's crazy is that none of these records are being made right now. Nobody's making chance anymore. No records like that are being made.
No, I don't think. I mean, I think it's just this whole new era is just in another lane itself.
You know what it is? It went from those party records to mashups.
Right.
And that's where you guys capitalized also on the mashup game.
Right.
So it went right into mashups and then the site and all that stuff.
Yeah, Crooklyn Clan site. I mean, we just tried to stay trendy with the DJs, you know what I mean? Whether it was a DJ that was playing in the biggest club in the city or a wedding DJ, you know what I mean? We like to cater to everybody. There's something for everybody, you know? Like whether it's a freaking country mashup or whatever, you know what I mean?
Me and Anthony were talking last night, and Anthony had made mention that, like, Be Faithful is like the go-to record. Like, if you're ever in doubt and the dance floor is like not working, you just throw that record on.
And you know what? There's not
like,
one DJ that could sit here and say they never played that song.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like.
That's like.
I wish we were the record label back then, because everybody had to buy 2 copies, and then if they burned them out, they had to buy more.
Yeah.
Now you just need a file, you know?
AV8, you guys did everything on AV8.
We did a lot on AV8, yeah. I mean, you know, we definitely made a good brand over there, and I think both of us kind of benefited off of each other. You know, they already had the Party Break label, and, you know, we were just kind of new. Yeah. And then, you know, together we made some good stuff.
So I wanted to mention a couple of names, and I wanted to see your reaction. First one is Michael Todd. So where does that bring you back to in your DJing days?
The tunnel, man. I mean, that was the room. Shout out to Chris Rita. Shout out to Joe IE. Man, shout out to Jessica Rosenblum, Peter Gation, the whole crew, man. Like, that was home for years, you know, upstairs.
How many years did you play in the Michael Todd room?
It had to be a good 5, 6 years.
That place was great.
It was great. I think where did I meet you? I think I met you in one Limelight.
No, it was Skyroom.
Skyroom?
Skyroom at Expo. That's the first time. Yeah, actually Frank Mancuso. He's like, you want to learn how to DJ? Watch Riz. So there I am, just standing there.
Oh man.
And that's, you know.
Yeah.
That's
so the Michael Todd room, 5 years.
Michael Todd room, yeah, because
under the bleachers in Palladium.
Yeah.
Bleachers in Palladium, but the Michael Todd was dope because, you know, that was the hip hop room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes after Charlie Casanova would DJ in the main floor, then they would come down and be like, yo, just play like a half an hour hip hop set. And, you know, people would bug out because it's on the big floor and everything. So that was just like, man, that was just memories.
And that was probably pretty monumental because hip hop for many years in the early years was a side room genre, right?
Definitely.
So it was never played on the main floor.
Right.
So that kind of broke it a little because Casanova used to play the whole night.
Yeah.
And he used to play, you know, a mixed format, right? And then they started putting you on. I remember that, going there.
Well, it was good because I think they saw how big hip hop was getting, or it was at the time, you know, like how many people really liked it.
Yeah.
So, you know, after hearing house all night, and don't get me wrong, I love house music. I was even playing house music back then, but I was always relegated to the hip hop room, which I had no problem with either. You know, I would have loved to spun house, hip hop, but back then it was more like, now it's open format. We got to play everything anyway. Right. But back then, you know, you're in the hip hop room, you play hip hop, play reggae. You know what I mean? And that's it.
See, but not so much open format nowadays. Like,
I think it's back though.
Recently, I've been to, like, when I go out, I don't really
hear. Is it just
hear,
hip hop now?
I hear just all
70
future.
Beats. Yeah. It
It's
depends
just
where you
future.
are though. Like, I mean, even I did Cabo on Saturday, and it was kind of like, yo, you could play freaking 20 minutes of hard house. You know, like,
well,
and
that's
just
not.
vocals, but, you know.
I mean, when I say open format, I mean, you know, the way you used to mix in the '80s. And
Right,
stuff.
yeah,
Like, nobody's reaching like that
Like
anywhere.
when do you hear Billie Jean anymore?
Nah, you don't
know
hear
what I mean?
that.
I know you rock, man. Like this dude on his wedding circuit, man, for years. Like I've been to many weddings, and this guy was the man. So and when I see him, I know I'm gonna have a good time. I know he knows the music. He's dope.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
But what I also wanted to talk to you about is actually your music selection. So I mean, I've heard you play numerous occasions, and you're always fresh in terms of like how you switch it up. So like, how do you go about like preparing for your sets, or like how do you like, you know like, all right, I'm gonna go into this room tonight, and maybe I'm gonna play like. There were nights where you just like came out of nowhere and played like a 25-minute set of like classic reggae.
Yeah.
And like, you know, just that's like out of left field.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people do that. So it's like keeping it fresh. So how do you go about preparing for stuff like that?
I think it's harder now because, I mean, we barely even hear reggae at any party
I
anymore.
don't hear reggae anymore.
You know, I mean, like, even stuff like Work, like the Rihanna record, is kind of like a reggae-ish record because of the beat. But, you know, it kind of brought it back to where you could sneak in a couple, you know. Now, but it's sad to say sneak in a couple because we used to do like.
It used to be a set.
Yeah, it used to be a nice set.
30-minute set.
And, you know, there was times, I mean, Club Exit. I mean, that was crazy. There was a time I used to get there at 2 and play upstairs, and it was packed.
Yeah, I
The place
remember
was a zoo. And the first thing I would do, no matter what the dude before was playing, I would start with reggae. And everyone would just lose it, man. And that was just such a good era, man. Because you can't come on and say, all right, I'm going to start with reggae today. It was kind of be like, yeah, that was
carrying
vinyl.
crates to the top.
And the terrible thing was, I was such a 12-inch record fiend that there's only so many 12-inch records you could fit in a crate. Right. You know what I mean? So then you had to start buying the rhythm albums, the reggae rhythm albums, you know, where there's a bunch of cuts on there, or like a reggae gold, even though the grooves will be smaller, which means that, you know, it's not going to sound as loud or sound as rich. But, you know, you wanted to stuff as many records as you could in the crates. I mean, we were carrying 4 or 5 crates, a bag. You know what I mean? Your friends would come with you, but they wouldn't be nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be. Oh, that was the worst, bro. The worst.
The nights they didn't come.
Yeah, but when they came in, but you couldn't find them when we were leaving. That's for sure, man.
Oh man.
But yeah, man, really good times. You know.
So that was the hip hop era. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing today, where you've sort of transitioned into a new group, Sick Duo.
Yeah, the Sick Duo is just myself and Chris Moody, a good friend of mine. We're just, you know, a lot of guys have aliases. There's guys. I mean, I know even Todd. Todd's the God. You know, Todd the God. He had many aliases. Yeah, you know what I mean? Black Riot, Reagan Todd Terry Project. Is so many.
He actually explained it to us why, because he had to do work on different labels.
Right, and then you had to change the name. Yeah. But I mean, even this day, Sick Duo is more of, you know, house, EDM, whatever you want to call it. You know, just tribal. We kind of like the tribal stuff. Yeah. You know, just another whole lane of something different. You know, because there's so many years of doing the same thing. It's kind of like you want to try something different. You know, kind of try and pop off now. At a time where it's very hard to, you know, you have to, a record you make lasts, you know, a week barely, you know what I mean? And it's like you blast it out, you get a good vibe for the first day or two, and then it's just like, all right, next.
Well, it's not just anybody can go from being a hip hop DJ and starting a house act, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I've grown up with Chicago house music. I've got the vinyl, man. I used to buy vinyl like crazy back in the late 80s, and I just, you know, used to listen to BLS. I used to listen to Kiss, Tony Humphries, you know, Louis Vega, just a bunch of dudes, man. And to make, I've always had that love as well, but I never really got to play it as much because I was always, you know, doing the hip hop stuff. So, but I never wanted to pigeonhole myself, you know, like some guys, even coming from an underground hip hop station where it was, you know, you weren't playing the main stuff. You weren't playing the Brand Nubians or the Rakims. You were playing a lot of unsigned artists or, you know, B-sides on records that, you know, that underground scene was used to. So, you know, a lot of people just stuck in their lane like that, you know. I always wanted to be like, all right, let me do this, and let me go play commercial clubs in the weekends, you know, and just balance it out where I can make a different lane for, you know, everything that I'm trying to do.
Right. So now you're mostly making house records.
A lot of stuff like that. You know, me and Sid are going to start doing some more stuff once Crooklyn Clan 2.0 is done.
What's going on with 2.0? Every time I speak to him,
I mean, you know,
wait, son.
Yeah. You know me. Sid is the spokesperson, and I'm the guy that's just kind of chills.
So
but that's the marriage that works. You know what I mean? Like. I love the dude, man, and he's such a brain behind a lot of things, man. And, you know, once that comes out, man, I think it's going to be a nice addition to, like, what's going on, you know what I mean?
Talk to us a little bit about that, about the whole CrooklynClan.net and how, you know, the mashup craze that came about.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like got a head start on it because, you know, after that whole party record thing was kind of slowing down, we were like, yo, what's the next thing? You know, it's got to be mashup, something where we kind of DJ that way sometimes, you know. So let's try and make it to where we make these things, and it's kind of like a mashup thing. I mean, we're far from the creators of any of that, but you know what I mean. We just kind of ran with what we have done in the past and just made it a different lane with that too. So, you know, that was popping for a while. You know what I mean? Like a lot of all these rock records, and then DJ AM really brought it to the forefront to people that didn't understand what kind of stuff that would be. But he was doing a lot of live stuff.
I feel like AM had a lot to do with the whole mashup movement.
Yeah, I mean, incredible dude, incredible DJ, and a lot of people looked up to him, man, because he was really a talented dude, man.
I was like, after he passed, like waiting, like he was like the only DJ that people would go out and listen to. Nowadays I try to say, all right, who am I gonna go listen to? Like I need to go listen to somebody play, and there's like nobody out there that I would listen to anymore.
It's just a lot different now, man.
It is. It just changed. Like, there was a time. There was like a time period where, like, I remember everybody would go to like, what was it? What was that club on 28th Street when he used to play? Crowbar. We would do the main floor.
Crowbar.
That huge.
Yeah, it was bananas.
Huge club, and he was on the main floor, and we would all just go watch AM.
Yep. And that was even in the vinyl days.
Yeah.
Things change, man.
Yeah,
Actually, I think it was Spectre who first like put him on in New York at that place.
Supper Club, did he do?
Supper Club, yeah.
Was one of them, yeah.
Or Social Club, or Supper Club,
something like that.
One of those. That's the first time I heard it.
Yeah, shout out to Big Bill Spector.
He's supposed to be here.
The Woody Allen of hip hop. He's I mean, like even Bill, man, he got me in that downtown circuit back in the days, all the cool parties. And they were definitely fun, man. I mean, Stretch, Ronson, the whole crew, man. It was just some really good nights, man. And that was kind of like, we were in the bridge and tunnel lane, and Bill was on the cool kid lane.
Yeah.
So it was a good balance,
So talk to us about like some of the places that you really enjoyed DJing at. Like, what were some of the parties that you did that like really resonated with you?
I think the tunnel, because I was there on the bridge and tunnel night sometimes, and then I was there for Mecca on Sundays.
Sundays, Flex, right?
I used to open up for Flex, and that was just eye-opening, because back then it was just, artists every week. I mean, I got a real sense of, okay, this is like the hip hop music industry now. It's like you see how everything works, how you deal with record promoters coming up to you with records, and I didn't know, I'm a nice guy, you know what I mean? I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll play it, you know what I mean? Like, but then this time, I see people like, yo, get out of my face, you know what I mean? Like, I had to learn that way, so I learned on the fly how to deal with people, and party-wise, it was just amazing, because it was just every rapper in the neighborhood. I remember one time, I played Get Money off the album, the Junior Mafia album, and I remember Flex coming in and saying, yo, what's that? And I was like, yo, this is gonna be the next one. And then I just turned around, and I just seen Biggie looking at me. I don't even know if Biggie knows who I am or whatever, but he was looking at me and going like this. I'm like, wow, man.
That must have
that was crazy, you know what I mean? And it was
awesome.
Yeah, it was dope, but just a lot of good things that came out of that party, man.
That I remember I went there very few times though.
Yeah, that was a big party for a long time. And how long did you open up for Flex?
Probably for like a year straight at least, man, like maybe a year and a half.
And it was like packed out.
Oh, packed. But even, it was
Every
cool.
Sunday.
Yeah, it was cool, because when I get there would be a line, and it would be like 9:30.
Yeah.
And then what I kind of did was build my own following on like what I was playing early. So every week you'd see these people coming back, because they knew I was playing like Patrice Rush and Forget Me Nots. Like I was playing all these 80s warm-up stuff. Then I would play a couple of underground. Then I'll play like Black Moon and stuff like that they wouldn't really play in prime time at that time. But I was doing all that, and then I would get another whole crew of people that would come every week, like, yo, So it's kind of cool to build a little following that way without playing, the biggest records of the night.
And you were setting up the night for Flex.
Yeah,
and up that whole crowd.
And
they're already grooving by the time Flex goes on.
Right, and I've always been a team player, so you know, I know what I'm there for. I know how to set him up.
Yeah.
And, you know, these days it's out the door, man. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like, you know, these festivals where everybody has a time slot. Okay, you're on from 3 to 4, you're on from 4 to 5, and everybody just goes in. Yeah. So you hear the same record for, you know, throughout the day, 8, 10 times. You know what I mean? Because everybody has to, because they feel like, you know, just because I'm early, I can't, you know, I have to do well because, you know, my
Johnny
reputation.
was actually talking about that last week, and he was saying how there's nobody breaking records anymore because of that.
Yeah.
Because now you have this small time slot.
Right.
And now there's nobody breaking new records.
No, because
everybody's playing their own stuff.
Right.
And nobody else's records are getting hit.
But even if, you know, like these guys' time slots, it's like you have to keep the people, whoever, even if it's early, if there's people there, you know, you don't want to like be playing for a dead dance floor. So you're going to have to play some familiar stuff, you know, and that's what these kids thinking. But like, I mean, I've walked into some clubs, these dudes are playing like, you know, W&W Hard House records at like 11 p.m. I'm like, yo, there's nobody here, man. Like, what are you doing?
Well, one of my favorite projects that you worked on, and I think it's one of the best CDs. I think it's probably my favorite CD, and it's Live from Brooklyn.
Thank you, thank you.
Like, hands down, I think whoever doesn't listen to that record, go listen to it. Hottest CD.
Yeah,
Talk to us about how you put that together.
See that handsome guy in the back? No homo. He's got the nice hairdo. Sean C. actually, well, but even before Sean, my boy Ems, who you're gonna have on the show.
Yeah, the 22nd.
Right. I mean, I known Ems for many years doing the college radio because he worked at Interscope. So he was servicing records, you know, all that stuff. We'd build a relationship. He was a record, he's a sneakerhead, same thing. Yeah. But he told me, I think he caught one of my sets when I was filling in for Premiere on BLS, because I did the whole vinyl thing. I brought to BLS and I did like a whole medley of all the, you know, the samples and stuff like that. And then it was weird because I didn't know what to expect. Like, I know radio, you know, you have to get this song in, you have to get that song. Kind of had free reign, and I was surprised because at that time I was doing a lot of battle routines like on the radio and stuff like that, and like I didn't know how that would take, you know what I mean? I was like overdoing it. I mean, I look back at it now, I was like, damn, I was definitely overdoing it, but you know, if they never said nothing, then cool. But Ems had caught one of the shows and was like, yo, you should press that up on vinyl. And I was like, all right, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. He had been working for Stimulated Records, which was Dante Ross's label. And they started putting out records. He's like, yo, you want to put it out on Dante's label? I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Dante's actually on the show next week.
Oh, next week?
Yeah.
Oh, dope. So, yeah, I wound up going by that handsome guy in the back, which you can't see, Sean C.
You'll see him later.
Yeah, and I just did the whole thing. He was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I just did the whole, I would come to his house every day, and I'd knock out as much as I could. Even though it's live from Brooklyn, there's definitely, you know, parts that aren't live, but, you know, it was just the name. I did live stuff on it, but, you know, I kind of just try to make it like a musical journey where it just starts out smooth and gets, you know, gradually goes up tempo, and all sample based with stuff that people, you know, artists used eventually. And yeah, they wound up putting it out. It did really well. And then I think like 10 years later, 10 years, man, a whole decade went by, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe let's do volume 2. So that's when I put it out with Sean was actually working at a record distributor in Boston, and we decided to just press up our own, do the double CD, put volume 1 on there, and then put the new one on there. And then I added some bonus things like, you know, doing the guest spots on High 97 and stuff like that. But yeah, we wound up putting out volume 2, the double CD, but that was like 10 years later. So now I know in my head, I'm like, it's 2016, so 2017 means it's gonna be another 10 years.
So we got another one coming up?
I don't think so though, but like I was thinking about it, and then I'm like, you know what? Sometimes, you know, when you make a movie, like a Friday the 13th or whatever, and there's 20 sequels, man, like it just gets boring, and you know, then they start comparing. I think I was just gonna do 1, 2, and just be happy with it and call it, you know, like just call it a
Or it could become like the Jimmy Fallon, Justin Timberlake history. Of
Yeah,
hip-hop.
right, exactly.
They get better and better, you know?
You know, do I roll the dice or do, you know?
I would roll the dice.
Yeah, so would I.
Easy for you to say.
I would roll.
But there's not, you know what it is? There's so many, there's still dope samples that people use, but I felt like I put so much.
You covered a lot
Of like key joints from the 90s, you know, some 80s and 2000s that, you know, the ones that were really, really classics. I mean, how many classics are there anymore? You know what I mean? Like, in that whole 2000 era, there wasn't a ton of samples. I mean, there was some good ones, don't get me wrong, but, you know, there wasn't like, a lot of them were more like, you know, the keyboard beats and stuff like that, and like a lot of the Swizz stuff that was really popping at that time, the Rough Riders, the DMX. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
You should do it. I'm sure everybody would want to hear another volume.
I'll take it into consideration.
How about, obviously, you know, you play hip hop and house music, you play everything, but in terms of hip hop, what would you say is your favorite era of hip hop music? Do you have a favorite era that you like? You know, like, is it the early stuff? Is it the 90s? Is it the early 2000s?
I mean, I love the mid to late 80s, because that's what I really grew up on.
Yeah.
The Canes, the Rakims, you know, the Public Enemies, the Chubb Rocks, all those guys, Brand Nubians. Well, that was like the turn at 90s. And then the early 90s, mid 90s, and even to, you know, to the late 90s. But I would say the early to mid 90s was the, you know, the Biggies and all that, man, the Wu-Tang. That was just insane, man. And I don't think anything is gonna ever beat that, man. Gang Starr, of course, you know, like Gang Starr. So, yeah, I mean, like, you know, like today's stuff is cool. I mean, I like some of it, you know, some of it I don't like, but.
Are you gonna like it in 10 years is the question.
Right, exactly.
You know, like I could put on a Ready to Die album.
And still
love still listen to the whole thing and not change, not fast forward, not skip tracks.
But is that because that came out at a time when we grew up?
It's probably because that's my era of music.
Right. Yeah. So like if your father pulls out a Bobby Darin album or something.
Yeah, but I'll listen to that too.
Yeah.
You know,
right, because we're music heads, and we heard that while we were growing up, or Bruce Springsteen, and my father was blasting, you know, like, and I got to know every Bruce Springsteen album because of him. You know, I learned a lot from my parents. My mom was a music head. So, you know, that's how I think everybody learns, because they just play it and play it and play it.
Yeah.
So what's cool is that throughout this whole DJ career of yours, you were able to make some really smart investments in like nightclubs and stuff like that. Why don't you talk to us about that? Because there's a lot of people that, you know, there's a lot of DJs out there making money, but they're not really putting it in the right places.
Right.
You were able to make some
smart
moves.
Yeah, I mean, you know, shout out to Shrine, shout out to Randy, Ricky, Ed Canes, and you know, those guys, man, they're doing their thing out in Connecticut with Shrine. And, you know, I got in as a partner, and with that place and the bowling alley that they're doing, but they're doing some really big things, man. I think they're making a whole thing on the Boston waterfront.
Wow.
And yeah, they got some thing going up in Gillette Stadium with the Patriots, so they're just, they're taking off, man.
Wow.
But it's good to be on that end and kind of just, you know, because this DJing thing ain't gonna be here forever for us.
Exactly.
Man. You know what I mean? So there's always a next generation, and, you know, whatever they can make out of it, as long as they carry it correctly, you know, then it's dope. But you gotta be smart, man. You can't just, you know, live for today. You gotta kind of think about what you're gonna do after.
Right.
You know, like I always say to you, man, like the weddings are dope, man. Everyone's always getting married. You know, that'll never end. And you have that thing on a lock where it's just like, it's like a machine. You know, you don't have to deal with promoters. You don't have to deal with this guy, the club owner, or
the bottle client,
VIP dudes, or the managers that are like, yo, that's the worst, man. Like when it started getting like that, that's when I really was like, yo, it's not the same anymore.
They're taking dance floors out of clubs now.
Yeah, so dance floor. I understand, man. It's a big business, the bottles, this and that. It's cool, but it's not, you know, for us, it's tough. For the club, it's great because they're making tons of money. But you know, it's harder now because now you're kind of like a robot DJ. You know what I mean? And when the guy comes over and says, "Well, this guy just bought a bottle, and can you play this record right now?" And it's like, "Yo, I could be on an up tempo, and they want to hear like something that's 90 beats per minute." No, right now. You know what I mean? Like,
now, drop it right now.
Yeah, drop it right now. You know, and then if you don't, they goes back. He tells the guy, and then you never get hired again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what? For those places.
Well, that's why we opened up the Function House.
Right.
Yo, it's great, man, because now you just
play whatever you want.
Yeah, you play whatever you want.
It's just about a good vibe.
All musical dudes in here.
There's no bottle clients in here.
Yeah.
This is just for the music lovers.
Just water clients.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Whatever's in that.
Yeah.
So you're gonna play some music for us.
Yeah, I play some stuff, man. Some tunes.
You're gonna go off the head, or you
Yeah,
got some
I got like a little folder. I just picked out a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'll just bug out a little
cool.
bit, have some fun.
Well, we're really excited that you're here.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me.
And we're really excited to hear you play.
Nice.
So we're gonna bring DJ Riz to the turntables, and he's gonna play a little music for us.
Thanks for tuning in.